Well, it's official. Boris Johnson is going to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom after a internal Tory party leadership vote. Apparently, there was 87% turnout out of amongst Conservative Party members in the UK, and Boris ended up with about two-thirds of the vote. He got about 92,000 to Jeremy Hunt's 46,000. Now, for American listeners, that may sound like an incredibly small number of votes to elect a prime minister, but the way it works in the United Kingdom is that whoever the biggest party is pretty much is going to be able to pick who the prime minister is. So the important vote in determining who the prime minister is going to be is an internal vote amongst party members. So it's kind of like a primary. Now, Boris's victory looks quite bullish for Brexiteers. Boris has been campaigning throughout this entire cycle that he will not compromise anymore on Brexit, and that we're just going to get it done. No more stalling, no more extensions, no more kowtowing to the Eurocrats. Boris says that the next final date, based on the last extension, is October 31st, Halloween night, and there's no reason why the United Kingdom should leave any later than Halloween night. On that night or before, Brexit will happen and the United Kingdom will be forever severed from the European Union, never to return. And of course that means that Boris is willing to leave with or without a deal, preferably, as far as I'm concerned, with no deal. Of course, a no-deal Brexit is the only real Brexit. A Brexit with a deal is really just sort of a negotiated withdrawal that allows the EU to keep some of its clause in the British government. If you want to be separate from the EU, you don't want to have overlapping laws and things and areas of jurisdiction which the UK will still cede to the European Union. You don't want any businesses in the UK being forced to follow European regulations. You want total independence. And I have a feeling at this point that the Eurocrats are so fed up with the British that at this point they're willing to call Boris's bluff, and they're not going to be willing to negotiate a deal with him by the Halloween night deadline. I think that the Eurocrats truly think that the UK needs them, and that a no-deal Brexit would be a disaster for the UK. In that sense, they've drank their own Kool-Aid since, of course, without getting into too many gory details about economics and whatnot, in principle, a no-deal Brexit would be far preferable to the status quo. Now, of course, if the British government decides to impose equally strenuous restrictions on their own people to replace the European Union's mess of overlapping laws and jurisdictions and regulations, well, then, of course, a no-deal Brexit is not going to be a net positive. But the UK has the potential here to go in a much freer direction for their economy and to open themselves up to international trade, because the European Union is, of course, notoriously protectionist. They want European states trading with each other, but not with folks around the world. Now, Boris has tried to be as bombastic as possible in promoting his version of Brexit and trying to prove that he is the most Brexity Brexiteer. He's even said that he will suspend Parliament to ensure that they don't prevent Brexit from happening. Now, of course, there have been questions amongst a lot of principled Brexiteers as far regarding how committed Boris really is to the cause, because Boris certainly comes across to me and many others as primarily a politician who is after more power. Now, to his credit, he was I haven't read too much of his older writings, but back when he was a journalist of some form, he was considered to be somewhat Eurosceptic and critical of the European Union. I believe he worked in Brussels for a number of years. So he does have that background backing him up, but there's been rumors certainly that before the Leave campaign kicked off in earnest, Boris was a bit undecided as far as what direction he should go, whether he should support Leave or Remain. The implication being that Boris wanted to be on the winning side of the argument. He didn't necessarily have his own beliefs that were strong enough to determine what he should campaign for. He just wanted to be correct so that he could look at the folks and say, I'm on the right side of history, you should give me more power. And that's, of course, been his MO since Brexit won the referendum. He has been championing himself as, the chief Brexiteer, saying, hey, I was on the right side of history. I was on the folks who won the vote, and I'm going to make sure that that vote is carried out, so you should put me in charge. And even if he's disingenuous, it doesn't necessarily make him wrong. He was on the right side of the Brexit issue. He still is, and therefore that should give him some credibility, even if he was only on there because he wanted more power. But if all he cares about is his power and he doesn't care about how he uses his power, well then if he's willing to use his power in a way that the folks who support Brexit like, well then why not give him more power? I care much more about how a man acts than what's in his heart when it comes to politicians, because I don't know them personally. I will never meet Boris Johnson. I'll never meet Donald Trump. I will never meet all these powerful men around the world or women. But what affects me is not so much their personality, but how they act in office. And so if Boris thinks that if Boris's one goal is to gain more power, and he thinks that Brexit is that's his meal ticket. Brexit is how he gains power and esteem, and how he gains the trust of the British people. Well, if that's the case, then he doesn't have any ideological hang-up that is going to keep him, that is going to make him sabotage Brexit. He has every incentive to carry out Brexit fully if he thinks that that is what will empower himself. Unlike many of the UK politicians that passionately believe in the European project, who want to stay so desperately because they think it is so perfectly enlightened, Boris doesn't seem to care one way or the other. Boris primarily cares about winning. And if you look at it right now, his party, as a result of not achieving Brexit, is in shambles. His party will most certainly be significantly smaller, their representation in Parliament, in the next election, if something is not done about the Brexit issue, and if they don't regain the trust of their voters who overwhelmingly supported Brexit. I'm sure Johnson is well aware that there is the Brexit Party waiting in the wings, led by his fellow Leave campaigner, Nigel Farage. And as many people have said, if Brexit is achieved, the need for a Brexit Party vanishes overnight. So if I'm Boris, the way I would look at this is, hey, I can take out my number one competitor as far as, the center-right goes by achieving Brexit and knocking the Brexit Party out of the game, while at the same time rekindling a lot of the support that had burned out or gone dormant amongst the British people who have been disillusioned with the Conservative Party because of their failure to achieve Brexit. Folks can once again be proud to vote for the Tories if they feel like they're actually achieving what they voted for. So for all those reasons, for essentially out of pure selfishness, I think that Boris will in fact work in earnest to deliver Brexit. Please respond to the comments below whether you think I am completely off my rocker, because of course I'm not British, so I don't follow these things as closely as some other people, but from across the pond, my vantage point seems to reveal that to me. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing. And if you do subscribe, please do click the bell, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.